Hi everyone, and welcome to 404. In this episode, I'm joined by Emily Larkin, a young advocate for invisible disability awareness, a member of Young Gael National Executive, and most importantly, a good friend. It was great to chat to Emily in this episode, in which we discussed what initially got her involved in politics and what led her to run for the YFG National Executive, while also discussing what it was like growing up in Ireland with an invisible disability and how she hopes to raise awareness on the subject in the future. If you're watching this episode on YouTube and there's anything you found particularly interesting, please leave a comment below. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can reach out to the podcast by emailing johnson.business.yt@gmail.com. So, with the housekeeping out the way, please sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. I don't know how to open this, because we decided to do this kind of a while ago, because you were originally meant to do the
YFG one.
Yeah, the Young People in Politics series. And it's funny enough because I had always wanted to do an interview with you more full out, or like a longer series style interview, because I know there's a lot of things that I'd like to talk to you about, because for someone who's only 20, there's quite a few things that you're doing at the moment, which is really interesting. So like, for example, obviously we talked about YFG, you're now a member of the Young Gael National Executive, you're the Diversity, Inclusion and Engagement Officer.
Yeah.
But then you also founded Invisible Disability Ireland. Yeah. That was part of your Gold Goshka, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you maybe just want to walk me through a bit of where that idea came about and why you wanted to start up Invisible Disability?
Yeah. So I suppose I have an invisible disability. I know what it's like for people to maybe not understand what it means to have an invisible disability because it's internal. People can't see it. And so I was getting quite frustrated about things, particularly as I was kind of starting up college. I noticed kind of a lot of the inequalities that I faced in secondary school, then college, and then just in general. And I remember looking up, invisible disability charities in Ireland, and there wasn't any. And I couldn't believe it, that there was no charity dedicated to invisible disabilities in Ireland, because there's one in the UK and the US. And I said, well, if there's not one there, then maybe this is something I should take on. And so I did. And then I said I would commit to my Gold Goshka and do 52 weeks of a community involvement. And then it just really tied in nicely with my Gold Goshka and then setting up something that I'm passionate about.
Mm-hmm. Because the page at the moment is very much an awareness page, isn't it, around invisible disabilities?
Yeah, so it's about all types of disabilities. It's about raising awareness, campaigns, just anything about invisible disabilities.
Mm-hmm. So you were diagnosed with rheumatoid. The words always escape me when it comes to this stuff because I'm just so not in depth with it. I was terrible at science and I was terrible at everything to do with anything with health. So you had rheumatoid arthritis at the age of 13, was it?
Yeah, so my type is juvenile idiopathic polyarticular rheumatoid positive arthritis.
Right.
So it's a very long name. But I was diagnosed. I reacted abnormally to a virus, and then it triggered an abnormal response in my immune system. And then I relapsed permanently when I was 14. And then I was put on a low dosage of chemotherapy, and then I was moved on to immunotherapy and a low dosage of chemotherapy. Mm-hmm. So I've been on that now for 5 or 6 years now. So I'm immunocompromised during COVID, which has been tough, but it's been okay.
Yeah. But even at the age of 13, like, that couldn't have been easy. Like, how, just from my own perspective, and like, feel free to stop me at whatever point, but most people at the age of 13 are just going into school. They're starting to, make friends in secondary school. Like, this is something that really puts a spanner in the works. Like, what was it like? How well did you react to it in that time? Because obviously most people wouldn't react well to it. But you're always, whenever I see you, you're always a very positive person. You're always outgoing.
It was a bit of a shock. I woke up. It happened on a Friday, and I just deteriorated. I missed almost a month of school. And then when I came back, I had lost half my hair. I had lost a stone in weight. I was very, very sick. I couldn't walk for a long time. So it was very challenging, but I hid it from my friends, obviously, because I didn't want people to judge me. And maybe that's one of the beauties of an invisible disability, is sometimes you can hide it. But it took a long time to come to terms with it. Particularly arthritis has a stigma around it being an old person's disease. So I was worried people were going to see me differently and see kind of my illness rather than me. But I had fantastic friends who were super supportive, always there for me. if I wanted to talk, if I didn't, that was okay. And then, my meds worked out really well. I went into partial remission at that stage, and my hair had started to grow back and stuff. So I'd kind of, gotten over the worst of it at that stage. And, having the friends and the family, and I had the fantastic medical team in Crumlin Hospital, just kind of helped the entire thing. So it was very tough, but I think when you live with it for so long, it just becomes part of the normal. I always say, like, when I go to hospital, it's just like going to the bank. It's just something you have to do. It's just embedded in my life. And I honestly forget when I say I have to go to the hospital. People are like, and I'm like, no. Like, it's just a regular checkup, because people don't experience that. But I always say that's my normal. So I think I've adapted quite well to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, one thing I always find fascinating with people who, especially are diagnosed with such difficult conditions at young ages, because one of my best friends had it's not similar to yours in any case, but it was very bad. He couldn't actually eat it. I think it was something to do with his bladder or his bowel or something, in which it meant that he wasn't able to eat physical food. He had to be fed through a peg tube. But one of the things I always notice is that, like, when you run into these sort of people, they almost have a more upbeat attitude about life because they have that perspective. And I definitely noticed that with you as well, because I always find that, as bad as things can be, there's always maybe a smile or a joke at the end of whatever happens. Has that always been the case? Or obviously I'd say there's times where you're very affected by it, and it wouldn't be, like, some days you might want to get out of bed, or you might want to do this, that and the other. Is like, how do you, at least if you were trying to talk to someone in a similar position about how you get out of that lump at the time? Yeah,
I think perspective is everything. When you can't walk and there's days when you're ill and you're in hospital, you really appreciate the positive things in life, and you appreciate the small things. Like, just getting here on the bus today and being able just to come here is just like such a blessing in itself, because I know what it's like to not be able to do that. So, and then I suppose, like, my time in Barrettstown really put a lot of things into perspective as well. Being with children and doing the therapeutic recreation program really helped. But yeah, I think when you have a different experience in life, that always kind of influences how you go about your life. And I feel, like, I am a positive person majority of the time. But, like, I do have my moans, my complaints. There are days when I do get upset about it, but, like, life is so short, you can't narrow and focus in on that. You have to just go with it. And I think you just make the best out of a bad situation.
100%. Bringing it back a bit then to Invisible Disability Ireland, is there sort of an end goal in sight for the actual charity itself, or how are you hoping to progress with it in the future?
So Invisible Disability Week is in November, so I suppose that's kind of a big goal in just getting awareness and campaigns and stuff. But yeah, I mean, we'll see where it takes. I finish in about November time, so I'm hoping I'll, like, keep going with it, because I just get back so many positive messages from people saying, wow, like, it's so needed in Ireland, you're really doing fantastic work. So I suppose it's just to grow it and to get as many followers as possible, and just to get the message out there that not all disabilities are visible.
Because I was noticing it, because I looked through the page again just before doing the interview, and there's a load of personal stories from people on that page. Are they all people you would have known directly, or are they people who reached out to you as well?
Yeah, so we did a campaign called Share Your Story. So it was kind of just to personalise it and make it more what actually is, an invisible disability to a person. So yeah, these were all people who just reached out and said, I'm interested in sharing my story, and they did, and it was fantastic just to, personalise what it means to have an invisible disability for different people.
So let's move on a little bit then to politics more so, and this is probably where we first met each other, was through Young Fine Gael, to which I'm no longer a member of, but you're still obviously very active in. But you were, it's sort of a strange story in a way, because not too many people in Young Fine Gael would, first of all, come onto a committee in 1 year and then also be on the national executive at the end of that year. What initially, like, how did you get into politics initially? Was it through health as well, or was it through something completely different?
Yeah, it was through health. I remember just talking about the health service and saying, like, oh my God, how awful it was, and my experiences. And my friend Dara said, well, why don't you join Young Fine Gael and actually make a difference to the health service, because they're the people you can change. Because I knew I didn't want to work in the health service, because I'm in and out of hospital a lot. And that's when I kind of said, he kind of planted the idea in my head, like, wow, like, that's such a good point, that everyone lobbies a politician. So it's so important that you get a politician and that you lobby them. And so they're the real change makers. So I kind of waited a year or two, wasn't really sure. I wanted to do my Leaving Cert first. And then I joined in college in first year. And that's kind of where it began. I knew I wanted to join Fine Gael just because I think it aligned best with my views. And I signed up. As you know, I went to the AGM. I didn't speak a word. I was terrified. Everyone was so politically experienced and I had never done anything like that before. So I was a little put off. But then I went back in April. And as you know, I became treasurer, God help us all. And that's kind of where the journey began. If it wasn't for the 5 friends that I initially met, I wouldn't have gotten involved, because I think even youth politics can be quite intimidating if you don't know the lay of the land or if you're not politically experienced. But yeah, no, that's how I kind of took the plunge then. And as you know, we went to summer school, we did lots of bits and bobs. And then the elections came around the corner for national executive. I didn't have any idea what it was. But then people were kind of lobbying me, I suppose, saying, would you run? Would you run? And I was like, oh God, no, like I'm not even in the place a year. Like most people wait, I think it's like at least 2 or 3 years before they run. But then I noticed there was no women for four positions on panel. So there was 6 candidates and they were all guys. And I was like, this isn't right. So I was texting loads of people being like, you should go for it. You should go for it. And everyone's like, no, I'm not going to go for it. Like I texted a ton of women and none of them were interested. And I kind of said, well, right, there has to be a woman, at the top table of exec. So I just said, right, let's go. And it was mad because I had no idea what to expect. I had never been to national conference before, but I think I learned some of the most important lessons in politics and life when you just take the plunge and get involved. You learn so much about yourself, about politics, just about everything. So I'm really glad I did it, looking back. And yeah, it's been fantastic. Obviously sitting at the top table, getting to make a difference, getting to help and do things in YFG that I'm passionate about. I have the best portfolio personally, I think, on exec. But no, it's been fantastic. I've loved it so far.
Yeah. No, you spoke briefly on the fact that there were no women running for panel at the time, and since then there's now 3 women, I think, on national executive, including a new co-option. But you also were involved in setting up the Young Fine Gael's Women's Network. Do you want to walk me through a little bit about that, because I'm not 100% clued in on it all? So
the last national executive had a women's network, but it was very tough work because there was only 2 people trying to coordinate and run it. So the advice I was given from my predecessor was to set up a committee and then do the women's network. So that's what I did. I went about it with myself and Susan, the other woman on exec, and we set up a committee and it kind of went from there. We've had 2 events. It's been fantastic, and I hope it just kind of goes from strength to strength because we need more women in politics, and hopefully this will be a good kind of vessel to do that.
Yeah, and from your experience as well, at least from a YFG perspective, and I know the main parties always get a lot of flack for not running enough female candidates. Do you feel that that is something that is being addressed now at a youth level?
It's difficult because if you can't see, you can't be. So I suppose Frances Fitzgerald was a trailblazer, being, the woman Taoiseach. But if young girls can't see what they could achieve, then they won't join. So it's letting them know that there is a career path for women, that we'd love to see more women, and it's getting them involved. I think it's changing people's attitude in the organisation as well, because I remember when I was approached to run, I was like, I had 1001 reasons not to run. But if you asked a man, they would just say, yeah, absolutely, and they just go for it. So I think we need to change our culture, our approach, just how we go about it, and realising that we do need to step up to the plate and take lead on leadership roles, for other women as well as yourself. So yeah, I think it's important that it starts at a youth level. But obviously, it starts with quotas, I suppose. They have been successful. It's not the best approach. You would like just women just to run on their own bat. But hopefully when we achieve equal representation, when we reach the 50%, we won't need quotas anymore. It'll just be kind of embedded in society.
You talked a bit about Frances Fitzgerald, and it is always really interesting because I remember you set up an event in Leinster House for women in politics, and it was so surprising just to hear that, like, I think it was 3 out of 4 of the people on that panel had all worked for Frances Fitzgerald. Now that probably says loads about Frances Fitzgerald having loads of people working for her all the time, but like it is very much something that, from my perspective as a guy, you don't really think about that much. But it was enlightening to see the impacts that one person can have on so many people, specifically a woman. Do you think there's anyone now that is kind of living up to the same legacy, inspiring not only yourself but other people in Fine Gael or in young Fine Gael as women to get involved in politics?
Yeah, I mean, all you need is that one role model, that one person. And, you know, Frances was in my constituency in Dublin Midwest, and she's such a trailblazer. Like, we had 2 women in Fine Gael running in the general, and we're doing so well with gender balance. We have a woman chair. So, like, you can really see the effect of having Frances in the constituency and what that has done for women. I think there's many people you can look up to, you know, Josepha Madigan being a minister, Regina Doherty. There's just so many women in Fine Gael you can look towards for inspiration. So yeah, it's very exciting to see what kind of the next generation of women will bring to Fine Gael, for sure. And
I suppose questions only kind of coming to me now, and it's quite apt as well that we're sitting in front of all the former Taoiseachs or Taoiseach who are all men. Is there anyone in particular that you think coming forward would be possibly the first female leader of Fine Gael and the first female Taoiseach maybe?
Can't say. I hope
keeping
it's a woman.
Keeping the cards close to your chest.
I have to be politically neutral, but no, I think it'd be fantastic to see any woman of Fine Gael, you know, become leader and hopefully become Taoiseach someday. So I think that's something that is very reasonable to aspire to, given the talent in cabinet and in the parliamentary party at the moment.
Of course, yeah. I suppose usually in the interviews I always ask when we're all gone and how would you like people to remember, but you're only 20, so I'm not going to ask that question. Instead, I'll ask a similar question to the one I did in the Young People in Politics series. Where do you see your future going, not only in the realm of politics, but obviously outside that as well, because you do stuff outside that as well?
Yeah, well, I'm 2 years into my degree, so hopefully I'll be a qualified primary school teacher. In terms of politics, hopefully I'll be given the opportunity to run and to maybe be on the ballot paper. But in terms of health, I could transfer over, become a civil servant, have to relinquish my party politics and work in the civil service. But yeah, it's all kind of open in the air. I'm kind of open to see what happens. I think that's the great thing about my career is you can work in so many different areas. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see what the future holds. Hopefully it's in politics or health.
Perfect. Emily Larkin, thanks a million.
Thank you.